My name's Jake Payzant. I usually just go by my last name because a lot of Jacobs growing up is like the most popular name
Oh yeah.
from like '98 to like the mid 2000s. So I always went by my last name. Started with football, so they started calling me Payzant, or the homies call me Pay. Um, I was my mom met my dad back in '76. Had me in '98. They were getting older, and they decided to fuck around, have a kid.
Yeah.
So I grew up partially in Pinellas County, Florida, when I was real young. Not too many people know that until I was like 3 years old, and then I moved up into like Sharonville area until I was about 5, and then I found myself in Loveland.
There
Went to
you go.
Loveland from went from Loveland for like the third grade, and graduated in 2017. So I'm sitting at 21 years young. you know.
Nice, nice. So where did music come in during that whole process of growing up?
So a lot of my grandpa's taste. So that was like the first music memory I had was listening to Frank Sinatra when my grandpa was playing. I don't know
Oh,
how young I was,
there
but
you go.
there's some Rat Pack there, some old jazz too. He's a military guy, so he had like to relax with it. And then my mom gave me like a MP3, like a Sano MP3, and that was like the first handheld device I'd ever had. And Tupac's album All Eyes on Me was on it, all 27 tracks or so.
Wow, so
And
that was your first joint.
yeah, that was like my first one. I would front to back that from like straight up the 5th grade to like the 8th grade, and it would just be me on the bus 7 a.m. just like reciting these gangster raps. Like I don't know why I connected with it, but it just was something that it made me feel something.
Absolutely. Now, who would you say around you supports your success, whether or not, it may be a manager type or other artists, videographers? I know recently we've been talking about, producing different content at my studio, but as far as your current team goes, could you speak on that a little bit? Maybe
Yeah, for sure.
specific producers that you work with or how you get your beats, etc.
Yeah, so it all started August of last year. Um, we were up in Athens, and a bunch of my buddies make music, and they were like, why don't you get on this? I would always like freestyle when I was drunk or something, and they'd be like, oh man, that's fire, you should record something. I never really felt like it, but that weekend they kind of coerced me into it, and we ended up making like a 7-track little mixtape in 2 days.
Mm,
And I just kind of fell for it right then and there. Like it was just that medium to express yourself that it's kind of hard to have the confidence to kind of like let loose on a beat. But once you do that and kind of hone it in, it's that sense of accomplishment is really fulfilling. At least that's how I see it. But the main guys that really helped me out, my buddy Brady Funk. I grew up with him. He's at Go Funk Yourself, and he's going to school, production school, Icon in Los Angeles and all that. And he basically hooks me up. Like my first mixtape, he produced most of the tracks on. I think 5 out of 7, and he helped me mix the whole thing, and he helped me get the DistroKid set up and put it out and all that. Like he was really that driving force, as well as my buddy Jake One, JJ Johnson. He's been producing for about 6 7 years. Started on GarageBand on the iPad and kind of worked it all the way up to his setup he's got now. And those two guys really kind of helped me keep it honed in and like because it's easy to just half-ass a song and then like you
yeah.
can't do nothing with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's a big challenge for any artist that, understanding the music business, and the music business is all about bangers. And if you
Yeah,
don't have a banger, it's really not going to go anywhere. And I think, a lot of people, I don't know how deep you've gotten locally in the city with the artists, but I know I play a big part in that.
yeah,
And it really seems like a lot of the artists are stuck almost in the 90s. There
yeah,
are certainly a lot of artists that, are more experimental, I would say.
yeah, yeah. I feel what you're saying. I've heard that a lot. Like, people say when it comes to lyrical rap and stuff like that, that the '90s are dead. Like, you gotta bring something fresh.
Yeah.
And as far as bangers, I mean, you're completely right. Back in the day, it was if you got that radio hit on your record, then we'll talk about putting it out.
Yeah,
But
and nowadays there's no payola. You know, having
yeah,
worked myself with radio stations, you come to realize these radio stations are nonprofits, right?
yeah,
That unless, there's some sort of corporate sponsor or, oh, you have a good friend here, you got a good friend there.
yeah, or
It's,
some real buzz. Yeah,
yeah,
then it's like, yeah, it's not even worth trying to.
yeah.
It's almost like you got to pay them.
But the funniest thing is, once an artist actually takes off, the moment the radio station actually wants a piece of them, the artist wants nothing to do with them. It's the you know most compelling thing that everybody thinks once they make it they're gonna be running around the rounds, but once you
Yeah,
make it and the radio starts calling and you had never gotten that type of attention before, a lot of artists blow it off. Where I've, like I said, having worked with the Wiz for 29 episodes with Freestyle Friday, I
yeah,
had a pretty close relationship and still have a close relationship with Jado. So I was able to parlay different opportunities for different local artists, but those B class artists that were starting to take off, they wanted nothing to do with the radio station. And at the end of the day, without those, B class artists, we're really not pulling any crazy views. So we're,
yeah,
creating all this content, and then all the, let's say larger artists
yeah,
aren't willing to come on because they've, been burnt before in the past by the radio station one way or the other, whether or not that's not being contacted by them or been given attention by them. That, working with media companies, for example, mine and, our back and forth,
yeah,
it really comes down to relationship, and that for me, it's more about long-term vision over short-term gains. So
yeah.
I'm always trying to, like, get to know people, because at the end of the day, that relationship is the most important thing. So as far as those relationships that you previously had, now moving forward, you have a project coming out. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so a good segue really because
Yeah, short
long
term
term,
goals.
yeah, long term goals is kind of what I'm thinking with this project and my previous
Yeah,
one. Is I'm not trying to reach for a bar I can't fulfill yet. This is really like my last one was just to show diversity and like it was some of the first music I made, and this one is some I really wanted to have come from the heart. That
yeah,
way, when later on when I'm trying to make those club records or those records that are gonna pop in a Macy's setting, with the right production teams and all that, like when I go to make something like that, I won't think of myself as selling out because, well, look, I laid the groundwork brick by brick and
yeah,
wanted to get personal with it because, my long term goal is this, but I can't go for that short term gain and try to blow up too quick and then be, like you said, left empty handed or feeling burnt because there is a stigma in the music, in like the small music scene, like
yeah,
where if someone kind of leaves you hanging, then like it's fuck them, and that goes for radio stations or whatever,
yeah.
from what I've heard or seen demonstrated. But you know, the
Absolutely.
the, the project itself, I'm calling it On Second Thought, and it's basically like my second evaluation at like what this rap shit can be, and I wanted to get some songs out, from the heart. So it's I wanted to keep it at an EP because Spotify calls anything an album, and I don't want it to be, people thinking it's like all that because I'm trying to stay humble with it, But basically, it brings you on a ride. Like it starts out real hot and heavy, and gets that adrenaline bumping. Like a roller coaster first couple tracks, and then I throw a curveball in there for the third track, and then the last two bring it home, and then the sixth track is a double parted outro. So it's two songs. Um, kind of blended together, and I really like how that one turned out because it's a real different vibe than I think a lot of people are going with, and you know,
And who
I'm
would you
excited.
say are your musical inspirations?
So I say, you know, like I said, my first joint
Tupac.
that I was ever, yeah, that, you know, as I'm sitting here talking to you, I got a poster of Jimi Hendrix, Snoop Dogg, Pac, Stevie Ray Vaughan, J. Cole, the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Mm.
So like just some of those guys, like a lot of rock inspiration. That doesn't always show through in the music.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times I go for that pure hip hop sound, but
Well, I'm
I
sure we
really,
all have that alternative rock background.
yeah, exactly. You know, I had a Blink 182 phase too. I don't
Oh
have
yeah.
any posters up, but I feel like everyone needs at least one of
Well, and I
those.
mean, think about the industry nowadays. You know, I worked on with a sound company that did sound for Erica Badu, right? And it
Yeah,
was a $65,000 writer for all kinds of instruments, right?
yeah,
And what has happened to the industry, you know, since there's not CD sales, there's not, you know, that economy behind it, who do the labels want to work with? Individual artists that cost substantially less with no band,
yeah,
right? You know, so that has really hit the musicianship of our music that is even available. You know, look at the Doors or look at, you know, the Rolling Stones or
yeah,
Queen or,
yeah,
you know, all of these major projects, you know, that sure they made, you know, tons of money, but just think about the costs associated with fronting that initial cost. Because what a lot
yeah. Just
of,
setting
yeah,
up a full band in the
yeah,
studio over and over again, and all that. You know, all the people it take to record a
yeah.
full band in a studio setting like that is definitely a larger cost than one
Yeah.
guy you
We're not
hire
we're
on
not as
roster.
lucky nowadays now that everything has kind of it's saturation really. You know, and I'm glad, you know, like you said, you're trying to do your own thing, your own type of genre.
Yeah,
So that's super important. Now, after this project, you know, obviously speaking, as we did a little bit earlier about the long term goals, you know, what would that unattainable, seemingly unattainable, you know, what would be the wildest dream of yours?
I think
Whether or not it's
I've
a
never.
feature or, you know, you can go any direction with this.
Yeah, okay. I think it would be really cool to be noticed by, you know, part of you know, a company that deals with hiring on artists to make big records. Because I feel like it'd be really nice to be one of the contributors to one of these, you know, songs that you hear by the weekend. Like, so I don't know if that would be a writer or if that, you know, I do the production thing a little bit, you know, not as heavy as of recent, but just something like that. Having my hand in a pot, like to just know that you lay part of history down. I think that's the main goal: is lay a legacy one way or another. And I don't know if
Legacy.
that's going to
That's
be.
good. That's good. I've not had that before. I think, you know, especially, you know, in my business too with video, I almost think like the work that I do is a documentary of my life. It's like home videos 2.0,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
type of thing that, you know, after I'm gone, I'm going to have, you know, this archive of content and
You're gonna
it's
live on.
your online spirit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, we're coming up around the 14-minute mark. I want to ask everyone, if you haven't yet, please subscribe and check out all of the links that will be listed down below in the description. This was the Total Potential Podcast. So, where can people find you?
I'm glad you asked. So if you look up on Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, Payzant, which is Payzant, you type in Payz, it'll pop up. As far as Twitter, it's at that Payzant guy. Instagram, Jacob Payzant, but I'm not really on there as heavy as I need to be. I've been trying to get this trailer thing down, but I ain't like showing nobody yet until I got it a little sharper. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, and that's where I come into the picture too. You know,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
far as
exactly.
media wise, you know, I'll be able to kind of cue you into a few different options um and that's, you know, kind of where we can go with this as far as, do you have any questions for me?
I think Michael, how'd you get started? You know,
Yeah,
your
I
first.
would
What was your
say,
first
are you
cue that this is the right thing to do for you?
sure? I really stepped in it. I was going to school for business management. Met someone in a marketing class. If his dad would have sold lawnmowers, I'd be in the lawnmower business right now.
Okay, yeah,
I'm the kind of like serial entrepreneur that it really doesn't matter what I'm doing. And
yeah,
I considered myself a consultant to the industry, that I wasn't actually in the industry. But
yeah,
now, over the past 3 or 4 years, I would consider myself a part of the industry. But to be completely honest, it was a means to an end, that I wanted to provide promotion for this company, and that was my goal, and I was successful. And um, that's basically what I'm providing to artists and different brands now, is, that same level of promotion, right?
yeah,
And going out on my own now, more recently, have the studio under construction, and obviously we're dealing with the virus right now, so I've been doing a
yeah.
lot
And I saw that
more.
you were a little hands on with it too. You're priming and painting them
Oh
doors
yeah,
too. I saw that on your Instagram.
yeah. And it's been a process, with the virus, doing audio only podcasts, and it's been quite successful.
Yeah,
This is about the ninth, eighth or ninth podcast. I don't know exactly. I'm still kind of dealing with a little bit of the, I don't know what I would call it, the confusion around a release schedule.
yeah,
Because on one end, and I'll tell you this, a little bit later, as far as, profile management, different thing. The most important thing is consistency.
yeah,
Having a consistent release schedule. For example, my podcast comes out every Monday, and the problem that I'm running into is, for example, this interview, right? This
yeah,
is the ninth interview. Isn't it wild for me to come on and go, hey, man, you know, this podcast is not going to be coming out for 9 weeks or 8 weeks or 7 weeks, right?
yeah, yeah,
And, that may not be too bad. If people enjoy my content, no problem. That's just what it is. But think about it in a month, right? When I've
yeah,
got 30 podcasts and I'm sitting in front of people and they're saying, oh, all right, great. That was a great podcast. When can I expect the footage? And then I'm like, hey, 30 weeks from now,
yeah, yeah,
so I'm kind of in the process that an audio based product is so easy, compared to video. It barely takes any time at all to process, which
yeah, yeah,
is preferably the reason why I've been doing it, because it's a lot more laid back for me. And that's really all that I'm trying to do right now. But scheduling wise, that's my main short term goal right now. Trying to figure out, should I release twice a week? But then within a couple weeks, it's all going to be gone, and then I'm going to be stressed out about, who's the next person that I interview. I don't want it to be like that.
yeah, yeah,
That I want it to be more of a relationship type of process. Because for a lot of the people that I'm interviewing, this is their first experience being interviewed. Is this your first experience being on a podcast?
yeah, yeah. It's my first
Exactly.
one on the podcast for sure.
And that's our mission statement, that I'm trying to provide the first media experience for people. So I'm sure they don't mind if it doesn't come out for, X amount of weeks, and I can still cut up different highlights and, you know, promo and different things like that. But for me, I'm really trying to develop a community,
Yeah,
because,
that's what I think.
yeah,
Community is key
yeah.
in as an artist perspective and as any sort of content provider on
Yeah.
any platform. It's that feedback and that consistency, like you were saying earlier, that really keeps people hooked in and involved and interested.
And I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That's my big push right now. And the people that I've been speaking to on IG, it's kind of a way to reach my agenda of instead of just digging into people's DMs and being scammy and being like,
Yeah,
"Hey man, subscribe. Hey man, like. Hey,
yeah,
follow."
yeah, yeah, yeah. No
Rather
one likes
provide
that
some
shit.
value. You know.
Yeah.
Um.
Well, I think you're doing a good job. I mean, it feels organic, and I think that even I was watching a few of your YouTube videos. I threw you a subscribe for
Yeah,
sure,
I appreciate it.
and and it just felt more natural than a lot of guys. Like a lot of even big YouTubers. I'm not saying I watch any of that crazy shit, but like sometimes on a like how to video, and these guys got 200,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
It still feels real fake. It's like so
Oh
that
yeah.
that tad of genuineness. I think that will set your channel apart.
Sure. Which videos did you watch?
I watched the update on the IGTV one you had.
Oh,
The
okay.
update on and then I watched a couple of your music videos,
Oh yeah.
which I thought were cool.
Okay. Um. Yeah. So I appreciate it. So other than my background, do you have any other questions?
I mean,
Or do you have any other thoughts? Because, we're coming up around 22 minutes. I usually just like, fluffing it up a little bit, if you have anything else on your mind or,
yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of thinking, um, like it's nice to have this sort of like community in Cincinnati as far
yeah,
as like that driving force that brings it together. May that be a certain videographer that's making a name for himself out on the scene, like shooting a bunch of videos, or
yeah,
like what you're doing, providing like that alternate. And like it may just be audio interviewing right now, but we'll be right back at it with the video interviewing and
sure,
the content in the studio. And I think that's just what's really going to make this city blossom, because I feel like we're really up next as far as like how cities kind of have their time and they're popping off.
sure.
So
Well, and I
I think we
think,
got a lot of
the
talent.
competitive advantage with this studio is I own it.
Yeah,
100% of everybody else in the city doesn't actually own the property their studio is in. So whatever money they have that they're reinvesting into their spot, they don't own that property.
yeah,
So
it's not easy.
having
Yeah,
yeah, so having the opportunity of owning this property, in a perfect world, we would, because I think, there's a really big misconception, that everybody wants to hate on corporations or, commercially minded people. And it's like, hey, that's how you grow a big business. It's
yeah,
having organizational structure that I think there's a big issue nowadays with everybody wanting to be the boss, right?
yeah, yeah,
Rather than being a team player. Like you mentioned earlier, like, sure, having a big feature would be great, but I just want to have my name on a project. Like, that is being truly humble and not, one of 1,000 artists that, you know, think that they're the shit, versus, there's a lot of people that you know, talk about being the GOAT versus being the GOAT, you
yeah,
know, that there's a strong difference. And that's another hard part, from a media end, to be honest with artists and being like, hey, this is not it, and
yeah,
it's really hard because with music, this is people's babies.
yeah,
Artists
yeah,
are very emotional.
yeah. They don't like to admit it, but I think you're right. I never thought that I'd have an attachment to music, but it's like something you craft from the ground up a lot of times. And so when you show it to your buddies that coming through or whatever, and one of them hops on their phone like 2 minutes into it, it's like it's like
Oh,
all right, then
wow.
like I gotta come harder then,
Yeah.
But to get back to what you're saying, thinking more team mindset. There's a
Yeah.
quote I don't know who said it, but you know, you can go fast by yourself, but you go a lot further with a team.
Yeah.
So I think that applies to most things, and especially music and media and anything like that, because you can't, David and Goliath, all these companies by yourself, because
Yeah.
they got the money to outshine you. You know.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I want to ask everybody once again, if you haven't, please subscribe. All of our links will be down in the description below. Go ahead and let everybody know again where they can find you.
Yeah, so look up on Spotify, Apple Music, Payzant, Payzant. You'll see Square One on there, and then August 26th, I got On Second Thought dropping 6 tracks, and this one's just more from the heart. If you want to catch me on Instagram, that's at Jacob Payzant, Payzant, and Twitter's that Payzant guy. So I just want to say thanks to you, Anthony.
Yes, sir.
This has been a nice experience for sure, and I appreciate everything you're doing for the city.
Absolutely, and everybody make sure to subscribe because there's going to be more content with him coming out, within the next couple weeks or months. So definitely stay tuned for that. And as always, this was Anthony Marshall, and we'll see you.